Namaste. Welcome to our 37th talk on the Bhagavad Gita. I will back up one verse. I have read the first verse of the seventh chapter, but let's backtrack and say that verse again. With mind absorbed in me, practicing yoga, taking refuge in me, hear how without doubt you shall know me completely. And of course, what need to be said on that I did. All right. To you I shall explain in full this knowledge along with realization. And that's very important. Knowing something and understanding or realizing it are two different things. For example, from childhood, those of us with a religious background were taught that God exists. We believed it, but we didn't know it. But the yogi is intended to know and to realize it, to experience it. I'll start at the beginning again. To you I shall explain in full this knowledge along with realization, which being known, nothing further remains to be known in this world. In other words, if you just know that one thing, you know the thing, or you know all the knowledge that this world was manifested for. That's what it was manifested for. The self-realized person is the intention of this living, vibrating, evolving universe. And that's it. You see? It's like there's a joke about a man that had a violin and he would sit for hours and he would play one note. And of course, it drove his wife to distraction. She said to him, "Why are you doing that instead of playing like other people with many notes?" And he said, "They're all looking for it. I've found it." Well, that is the way it is with this one thing, which known, yet then also everything is known, because that reality is everything. Now, we're going to come to a point that doesn't sound very optimistic, but the purpose is to spur us on to make effort and get out ahead of the herd in the race for the divine goal. Krishna says, of thousands of human beings, scarcely anyone at all strives for perfection. Well, that I don't think is too pessimistic. I think you could say you could certainly say hundreds of thousands. Chances are it's millions. But anyway, of thousands of human beings, scarcely, hardly anyone at all strives for perfection. That is, realization and totality of consciousness. And of those adept in that striving, now this is interesting, it's not saying somebody that doesn't quite know what they're doing, someone who doesn't understand how to go about it, but of those adept in that striving, scarcely anyone knows me in truth. Now, first of all, because God is a single thing, and therefore you either know it or you don't know it. So it isn't like having a vast scope of knowledge. In a sense, when you know it, you know everything. But the essence of everything is that. So it's not a matter of intellect. It's not a matter of learning facts and so on. It's the matter of learning beyond which there is nothing else to be known. And scarcely anybody knows it. And again, it says, of those adept in that striving, I mean, they're able. So, what does this mean? It means that the person who's a slough off, a layabout, spiritually lazy, who doesn't care really about self realization, can read this and say, well, then why should I bother? Answer is, you shouldn't. The teachings of the Bhagavad Gita are for the person that says, I will be one in millions. If I have to, I'll be one in billions, but I will get there. I will realize. I remember we had a fill-in teacher in English my senior year in high school. Wonderful person. But she'd been married to a Methodist minister. And she said, of course, commending this idea that he had often said, I don't want to be just part of a few. I don't want to say, oh, well, I'll just be a spiritual elite, one of the sort of chosen and perfected. I wouldn't want that at all if I couldn't be one of all. Well, that's just as cute as can be, and it's just as deluded as can be. Because, you see, his religion taught him nothing, basically. He didn't even have hardly a minor concept of God. And everything he was mostly taught was utter superstition anyway. But there has to be the person that says, okay, everybody falls away, everybody quits, I won't quit. And believe me, as a yogi, this is what you're going to see people falling away, most of them walking away quite consciously, losing interest totally or pretend that something else is what matters, etc., etc., etc. I went to my first meeting with Swami Kriyananda, Yogananda Ji's disciple, was when I actually went all the way to San Francisco from the Middle West to meet with him and to talk with him about certain aspects of things, about sadhana, the teaching of sadhana, and so on. He talked about how Yogananda said, they will fall to the right and left of you in this battle, but you keep on. And he had just made a recording of some songs, spiritual songs that he had written. And he brought it home to his place. I was staying there at his apartment. And he played it for me. And one of the songs was entitled Go On Alone. And of course, when I heard it, I understood where it came from. Because he had dedicated his whole life to the teachings that he had gotten from Paramahansa Yogananda. He had been in the second highest position in the organization started by Yogananda Ji. He was in India where he did amazing work. I've known people who were there, and he would speak to thousands and thousands at a time and really inspire people. It was amazing. In Delhi alone, they had 30 meditation groups that would meet regularly to meditate. And they had, or he had formed 30 groups because basically there's 30 days in every month. And therefore, every single evening he went to one of those 30, all in sequence, led them in meditations, spoke with them, answered their questions. Because of his personal character and integrity, the Indian government had given him a large tract of land in the very best areas at the edges of Delhi for him to start a yoga ashram. And then one day, he gets a wire, come back to America immediately, go to such and such a hotel in New York City, and wait. Well, he did. And when he got there, he asked about those that came, had sent the telegram. Were they registered there? They looked at the desk and said, yes, they're here. So he thought, fine, I'll just wait till, he said, please let them know I'm here. And he went to his room and he waited, he waited, he waited. Nothing happened. So he went to sleep. He woke up in the morning and there was an envelope that had been pushed under his door. So he got it. He opened it up. He took out a piece of paper inside that told him that he was expelled completely from Self-Realization Fellowship, that he had no position whatsoever and wasn't even a member, that he must never, ever teach any of the teachings of Yogananda. He must never teach any of the methods he had learned from Yogananda. And he was basically just to disappear. You see, there is a thing, I'm sorry, I can't quite remember the reference to it. Oh, it's in the Bible, where David says, it was not a stranger who did this to me, but it was you, my own mother's son. So, the children of his guru, who is, of course, mother, father, and all, had done this to him. And he tried to talk with them. He tried to reason. Nothing worked. It was basically just, you're vile, you're an outcast. And remember, you're not supposed to teach anything. And it virtually destroyed him. And also, he just flown back to America. He hadn't thought of any of his possessions in India. Where was he going to go? What was he going to do? Well, he was wise. He understood, I can manage. Wouldn't like it. By the way, you might be interested to know that the people who expelled him from Self-Realization Fellowship sent telegrams to every Indian consulate in the world telling them that he must not be ever again given a visa to return to India. And for years he was barred from India. It was actually in Delhi, written down there that this Donald Walters could never be permitted to come into India again. And it wasn't until some people came and really campaigned hard that it finally was resolved. So he went through all that. And they wanted him to be destroyed. They even said, we'll sue you if you're ever doing anything in public. But you know what? He'd been given a job by Yogananda, and so he did it. But he had done everything. He'd even asked to be allowed to be a janitor in the organization's uh, headquarters because, you see, he had brainwashed himself along with him into the idea like, what do you hear in the Catholic Church? The church is the body of Christ. If you're outside the church, you're outside of Christ. So, Self Realization Fellowship was the body of Yogananda. If you're not there, you're alien to Yogananda. Well, then what are you if you're his disciple? You see? Of course, people who inquired, either they were given runaround answers about, well, where is Kriyanandaji? Is they were given lies. Oh, he's quit. In other words, oh, he's jumped ship. All this, again, his own guru's children had done it. Did he become bitter? Did he become angry? Did he decide to say, well, all right, I'll show him? No. But he said to himself, I know what the master told me to do and I will do it. And it was bitter and hard. It was, they intended him to be destroyed by it, and he virtually was. But they didn't take the fact into mind. They couldn't cut him off from the master. Of course, they thought they could. I'm sure they thought they were above God. They certainly acted like it. And he just gritted his teeth and he went right ahead and did what he should do. Though who might fuss about it or decry about it, he did it. So in this album that Kriyananda had made, there was a song, as I say, called Go On Alone. When I heard it, I just couldn't say a word because I knew it was born from this great soul grief and soul struggle that it had taken for him to come to that true sankalpa. I will go on alone. That's what a yogi is. A yogi is someone that will go forward even if no one goes forward and everybody says, stop, stop, stop. They will do it. You talk about spiritual heroism. I'm telling you this. Swami Kriyananda was a spiritual hero, hardly paralleled, frankly, in spiritual history, in my opinion. So this is what you and I have to be. It doesn't matter if everything militates against it. It doesn't matter if I get some strange disease that if I meditate, something will go wrong in my body chemistry and I'll fall over dead. I will fall over dead, but I'll die doing it. After all, shouldn't we be a little bit more than the gun owners who in past times had bumper stickers that said they'll take my gun away from me when they pry my cold dead fingers off of it? If a bunch of mountaineer hillbillies like that can have that idea, why not you and I? Yes, indeed. That's it. This is the thing. Because there's nothing further in this world to gain but that vision. And how many are like that? None of them, because they're all cowards. They're all cheap. Simple Simon met a pieman going to the fair. Pies in those days were savory things. They were vegetable pies. It was not dessert like we know. Simple Simon met a pieman going to the fair. Said Simple Simon to the pieman, "First let me taste your wares." It was common. They give you a little bit of piece, you taste it, you liked it, you bought one. Said the pieman to Simple Simon, "First let me see your penny." Said Simple Simon to the pieman, "Alas, I haven't any." Well, alas, most people don't have it. They don't have what it takes. But why shouldn't you and I have what it takes? That's a fact. By the way, if you want to see something I think is interesting, if you look on our ocoy.org website, do a search for Simple Simon test, because that I only heard when I was growing up that little verse I cited, but actually it's a whole poem with a bunch of verses. And it's a perfect example of someone who is trying spiritually, but of course, safely, not going to make it because they don't intend to make it. So, anyway, there is a poem. I wish the poets uh, named it a slip at this time, but he wrote a poem. He was an English poet. At the end, he says, "Ah, love, let us be true." Now he meant like, oh, let's love each other and be true to each other. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That never gets beyond the gates of death. The real love between the self and the absolute, that does go beyond those gates and doors of death. So let us be true. Namaste, namaste. What more is to be said?